Hi, I'm Crystal. My dad looked me in the eye and said, "Plane tickets are $1,500 each. You're not worth it." I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just smiled. And then I watched as my credit card got drained. 4 business class tickets, spa upgrades, hotel suites, all booked without me. But what hurt more than the theft was realizing they never wanted me there in the first place. They used my money, they used my name, they used my silence. I always thought family meant love. But what if love came with receipts I never agreed to pay? It wasn't even a real dinner, just a Sunday sit-down with too many chairs pushed back and plates that still smelled faintly of soap. My father reclined on the couch, swirling the last few sips of his iced tea, while Mom fussed over a bowl of fruit no one touched. Inez sat cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through something on her phone, probably Pinterest boards for their Hawaii trip. I sat at the edge of the ottoman, no plate, no napkin, just a bottle of water I brought from home and a head full of questions no one bothered to answer. "Flights are around 1,500 apiece," Dad said, not even glancing in my direction. "If you can't afford it, stay behind." No pause, no wink, no, "Just kidding, sweetheart." Just that. A sentence wrapped in the sort of finality only a father can deliver when he's not trying to hurt you, but doesn't care if he does. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because crying would have given them too much. Instead, I tucked my hands under my thighs and nodded like he'd just suggested a different brand of shampoo. "Got it," I said. Ines looked up briefly, then back down, her thumb moving fast like nothing had happened. The room held still for a moment. The fruit bowl shined under the overhead light like a centerpiece at a wedding I wasn't invited to. "I mean," Dad added, "we'd love to have you, but you know how it is." I didn't respond. He already knew I did. Mom hummed softly, walking past to fix a coaster. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. But my knuckles tightened until my ring left an imprint in my skin. Silence is sometimes the loudest scream. That's what my therapist once said. Back when I still tried to explain how it felt to be the family's reliable ghost. As they moved on to discuss restaurants near the resort, seafood versus steak, I pulled my phone from my back pocket. An alert blinked across my lock screen. "Your Chase card was just charged. $6,058.38, Maui Travel Authority." I blinked once, then again. I opened the banking app. 4 tickets. All business class. Passenger names: Randall Bishop, Ines Marigold, Valmai Sterling, Sofa Nisba, Sterling. I checked again. My name wasn't there. Not once. I stared at the screen as the words blurred slightly. My fingers hovered, cold and still. "Not mine," I whispered. There was no fight, no panic, just a quiet, calculated inhale. Then I tapped "Dispute All" and locked the account. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "can I use the restroom?" She waved me off without turning. I walked down the hall slowly, each step silent, my phone tucked against my palm like a secret. Inside the bathroom, I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, not sleepy, just worn thin. I'd worked 3 extra shifts last week, covered for a nurse who'd called in sick. Paid Inez's insurance deductible last spring when Randall got laid off. I hadn't asked for it back. I never did. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. But something sharp lodged under my ribs. Not rage, not sorrow. Something harder, something colder. Memory flickered. That birthday dinner, my 29th, the one they forgot until 2 days later when Inez posted a photo of her own brunch. The vacation 3 years ago, they said the Airbnb wasn't big enough for +1s, but Randall's cousin somehow made the cut. The family photos from Christmas, when I was the one taking them, so naturally, not in them. They hadn't forgotten me, they had removed me, and now they'd used my credit card to fly across the Pacific without even the decency to pretend I mattered. I stood, straightened my sweater, and walked back into the living room. "Why did you use my card?" I asked Inez quietly, standing behind her chair. She looked up, blinked once, then tilted her head. "We thought you'd want to help," she said, Her tone was chipper, effortless, no apology, no shame. Help, help, or just finance your fantasy. I didn't reply. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded. Later, back at my apartment, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. I opened a new spreadsheet. Title: What I'm owed. I began typing. $20,500. Emergency rent loan, 2022, never repaid. $1,800. Randall's surgery deductible, 2023, $600. Anniversary dinner deposit, surprise for mom and dad, $200 for Maui tickets, and line after line of favors, forgotten, twisted into expectations. Family doesn't mean access. Love isn't entitlement. Her voice, my therapist's, ran through my head again. I didn't need an apology. I needed an invoice. I'd swallowed enough guilt to keep their dreams afloat. And they mistook my silence for permission. Not anymore. If they thought I wasn't worth the price of a seat, I'd build my own damn plane. I clicked open my travel app and typed, one way. Somewhere far, somewhere quiet, somewhere without strings. I hit confirm. The morning after locking my credit card and booking my own one-way ticket, I woke up to the dull buzz of my phone vibrating across the nightstand. A string of messages from the family group chat stacked like bricks on my lock screen. No, are you okay? No, why didn't you say anything? Just a list of problems, complaints, and instructions as if I was still the family's unpaid administrator. Mom, the charges didn't go through. Can you check again? Inez, airport says the tickets aren't valid. Did something happen with your bank? Dad, we're not paying these late fees. You should have told us if something was wrong. My expression stayed flat, but inside, something curled. Not once did anyone acknowledge what they had done. No one asked permission. No one apologized. I was just supposed to fix it, again. I started replying to a friend's text, asking about dinner next week, when another message pinged in. It wasn't from my family. It was from Lisa, my old roommate. Attached was a screenshot, a group chat titled Worthy Ones. Participants: Inez, Mom, Dad, Randall, No, me. Flight confirmations, hotel links, inside jokes. Inez had even posted a meme, no drama allowed, with a caption that read, "Finally, a trip we can all enjoy." I stared at the image. My finger hovered over it, zooming in like proximity would change the fact of my absence. No drama, I murmured, meaning no me. And then it clicked. 2 weeks ago, Inez had called, sweet, soft, sisterly. Hey, could you spot us for the deposit? Dad's bonus is delayed. We'll pay you back right away. I said yes, because I always did, because I thought I was part of it. Now I realized I was part of the budget, not the plan. A flash of memory flickered. 2 Saturdays back at Dad's house. Brunch. Thea, bring coffee. Thea, grab more napkins. Thea, sit anywhere. There's room on the bench. I remember walking in still wearing scrubs. I'd come straight from a night shift. I wasn't supposed to be off, but I swapped with a coworker so I could make it. I thought showing up mattered. They were all dressed in pastels, peach, mint, lavender. Someone handed me a paper plate while everyone else had porcelain. No one said a word about it. Over coffee, I stood near the kitchen island, too tired to fight for a seat. A cousin leaned toward Mom and said, half laughing, "Well, Thea's not tied down. No husband, no kids. She can just jump on whenever." Someone snorted. Another nodded. Nobody defended me. Nobody said, "She's the reason we can afford any of this." That moment didn't sting right away. But standing in my apartment now, staring at the Worthy Ones chat, it sliced deeper. Inez was the star. She had the marriage, the curated Instagram life, the newsletter about authentic joy sent to over 10,000 subscribers. She posted brunch photos with captions like gratitude and grace, while siphoning money from my emergency savings. Me. I was the support beam, unseen, until I cracked. A voice from years ago came back. An old professor once said, Families don't always function. Sometimes they perform. This trip, it wasn't about relaxation. It wasn't even about family. It was a performance, a stage set without me because my presence complicated the narrative. I was the reminder they didn't all build themselves. Back in real time, another message came through. It was a reply in the family group chat. Inez, she doesn't have a husband or kids. She's flexible, right? No one disagreed. No one even hesitated. That line sat in my chest like a cinder block. I had spent the last 5 years rearranging my life for theirs, changing shifts, driving hours to babysit, wiring money across states, canceling plans. But now, the fact that I didn't have a nuclear family made me optional, not valued, not invited, just convenient. When you don't build your own life, they'll use you to fund theirs. I tapped my phone, stared at the group name, still blinking from earlier, family chat. I considered responding. This is cruel. Delete. You used me. Delete. I sat in the silence. My phone buzzed again. I turned it over so I wouldn't see the screen. They wouldn't understand. And I was tired of explaining pain to people who caused it. Above my fridge, a sticky note hung slightly askew. I'd written it months ago, during a session where my therapist asked what I needed most. It read, "Some rooms were never built for you to enter quietly." I stood up, walked across the kitchen, and smoothed it flat. Then I opened my notes app, typed one word at the top. Invoice beneath it, I wrote, April 12th, $2,000 to Inez for Randall's dental emergency. Just until payday. My fingers hovered for a beat. And then, almost on their own, they kept moving. I turned off the living room light and carried my laptop to the kitchen table, flipping it open as the kettle warmed. I didn't need coffee. I needed clarity. Something to stitch the chaos into something legible, something mine. The spreadsheet waited in silence, its cells blinking, empty, eager. I titled it, Undue Support, 24 Months. Scrolling through my bank statements, the absurdity began to line up. February last year, $984 to an online travel agency. 3 days later, Inez had posted a story, Randall lounging in a pool with a "thankful for our spontaneous getaway" caption. I paid for the spontaneity, apparently. April, $432 for a rental van, Mother's Day road trip. June, $760 to a steakhouse I'd never eaten at. The same night they posted a carousel. Family nights are priceless. That one cost me 2 car payments. I was the invisible thread holding their vacations together, I whispered, typing each charge into rows. I matched them with receipts, confirmed dates. Then I began copying transaction IDs, each one a moment they'd taken without asking, without acknowledgement. Thea Vale, the family ghost with a pin. I added a new column, who benefited. Another, what they said. None of it included me. The kettle hissed, but I didn't get up. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wanted a record, because they were counting on me to forget. But I was done forgetting. Last June came back like a backhand to the face. Valmai and Sofonisba's anniversary dinner. Inez called mid-May, syrupy tone in full swing. Hey, quick thing, can you spot the deposit for Mom and Dad's dinner? It's a surprise, and I'm tight until Randall's check clears. I agreed. 3 weeks later, I watched a post pop up from her feed. Candlelit photos, close-up of wine glasses clinking. Caption, all thanks to Randall for this incredible surprise. Couldn't ask for a better husband. I waited for the tag, the mention, a DM. Anything. None came. The comments rolled in. Ugh, he's a keeper. Seriously, relationship goals. I remember blinking at my screen, that strange, stinging silence wrapping around my shoulders like a winter draft. I'd paid for their celebration, and somehow, I became the ghost at their party. I typed it out now. Line 7, June 14th, anniversary dinner deposit, $600, claimed by Randall publicly. No reimbursement, no acknowledgement. Thea's generosity, reshaped, renamed. I kept typing. Next came the card. That damn supplemental card. I gave it to them 2 years ago after Dad's blood pressure scare. For emergencies, I said. Medical or travel only, just in case. I should have burned it. Now I looked at the statements and saw exactly how far they'd stretched that definition. Spa packages tagged during Hawaii week. Lounges in airports I've never seen. Priority boarding for Randall. Wine tastings. The kind of indulgences they always claimed they couldn't afford, until someone else picked up the tab. They didn't just misuse my card, I said aloud, eyes fixed on the screen. They bet on me never saying no. One entry stood out. Priority check-in, Randall B., $72.84. He hadn't even booked it himself. It was listed under my card's autofill. Sloppy, entitled. I rubbed my temple, a dull ache brewing. They weren't stealing. They were assuming. And assumption, when it's this habitual, is a form of erasure. Clicking into Inez's Instagram archive, I braced myself. It didn't take long. Christmas morning. A boomerang of Eliza, my niece, unwrapping a large pink box, one I recognized. I'd ordered it from a Black Friday sale, compared prices, tracked delivery, her name written neatly in Sharpie on the tag. Inez's voice in the background. This one's from Nana. I paused the video, watched it again. This one's from Nana. My name absent. Again. I closed my laptop halfway, staring at the wall. I didn't want recognition for every favor. I didn't need fireworks. But I had spent my money, my time, my care, and they gave my credit to someone else. They didn't forget me, I said, voice flat. They replaced me. The ache wasn't just in the memories. It was in the quiet agreement I'd made with myself for years. I'll keep helping because one day they'll see. They didn't, and they wouldn't. For every time I'd said, it's fine. For every time I swallowed the comment, ignored the exclusion, rationalized the cruelty, I had trained them. They didn't have to hate me to hurt me. They just had to not think about me at all. I reopened the spreadsheet. Line item 13, Christmas toy, Eliza, $45.19, credited to Sofonisba. I added a new column, emotional weight. Each row received a number between 1 and 10. Then I labeled every entry, unrequested, unacknowledged, unreturned. It was never about one event. It was the slow corrosion of respect. I leaned back in the chair, the creak of the wood the only sound in the apartment. The weight wasn't in my chest, it was in my clarity. This list wasn't for them, it was for me. A mirror held up to years of one-sided sacrifice. I hit export, saved it as a PDF. Family Ledger, Crystal Vale. I didn't send it, not yet, but I printed it page by page, each sheet cool and solid in my hands. I folded them carefully, slid them into a manila envelope. On the front, I wrote a single word, receipts. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. My scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic, and my calves ached from the 12-hour shift that refused to end on time. I dropped my bag by the door and headed straight to the kitchen. On the table sat the envelope I'd printed the night before. Family Ledger, still sealed, untouched. I hadn't had the nerve to reopen it. Not yet. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that either heals or haunts. I turned on the TV for background noise, but didn't bother watching. My eyes drifted to my phone, where a message notification waited. Aunt Elodie. Her message was short, just one line. You should have been the one to inherit the cabin. I read it 3 times before I exhaled. That cabin had been my sanctuary growing up. It wasn't just the lake or the cedar trees or the rickety dock. It was where Grandpa used to tell stories by lantern light, where he taught me to tie knots, to listen for owls, to think before I spoke. I hadn't been there in years. I assumed it was still being maintained for all of us. I was wrong. I pulled out my laptop and searched Inez's Instagram. It didn't take long. There it was, a post from last summer, geotagged at the lake. The photo showed the same porch swing Grandpa built, now painted a shade of pastel pink. The caption, "The Marigold Lodge is finally complete. Can't wait for all the memories ahead." My name wasn't mentioned. I stared at the screen, heart slowing to a crawl. The last time I was at that cabin, I left a book in the guest room. A signed copy. I wondered if it was still there, or if it had been tossed with the rest of me. I called Elodie. She picked up on the second ring. "I'm sorry," she said. "No greeting. You deserve to know." Did they legally transfer it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "Yes, a year ago. Valmai told the lawyer you were too busy to maintain it. That it made more sense for Inez." I couldn't even laugh. The audacity wasn't funny anymore. "They didn't just take things," I said quietly. "They rewrote who I was." After the call, I opened the ledger and added a new line. Property, family cabin, erased. A few minutes later, I stumbled on an old text from my cousin. "You missed some hilarious moments on the trip Zoom call. Wish you were there." What Zoom call? I scrolled back through the family thread. Nothing. No invite. No link. But screenshots told the story. There they were. Valmai, Sofonispa, Inez, Randall, even the cousins, all smiling, deciding on restaurants, debating ocean view versus garden view. One frame captured Inez mid-sentence. "Crystal doesn't really like group stuff anyway." Laughter, nods, agreement. I closed the photo, jaw clenched. They didn't exclude me by accident. They built a version of me that made it easier to leave me behind. It was a strategy, not a slip-up. I went back to the ledger, added 2 rows, cabin, market value, $248,000, gifted to Inez without consent. Zoom exclusion, emotional cost, incalculable. Then I added a new column. I called it emotional theft. They hadn't just taken money or property, they'd taken presence, memories, belonging, voice. They stripped me of space in moments that should have been shared and replaced them with a curated silence. I opened my email and drafted a message to Valmai. Subject: cabin. Body: why didn't you tell me? Backspace. I rewrote: you had no right. Backspace again. I sat there, watching the cursor blink like a ticking clock on a bomb I wasn't sure I wanted to detonate. My fingers hovered, curled, flattened. Then I closed the laptop. They think silence is surrender, but I've turned silence into structure. Confrontation doesn't always need shouting. Sometimes it needs documentation. Calm, cold, undeniable facts. I walked to the printer. Printed 2 more copies of the spreadsheet. One went into an envelope I labeled "Do Not Ignore." The other I scanned, then filed into a new folder on my desktop. July release, password protected. Because if they ever claimed it was all in my head, I'd open that file and show them what they chose to forget. "If they think they've seen the worst of me," I whispered, sealing the envelope, "they've misunderstood the best of me." My phone buzzed again. I ignored it for a moment, but curiosity won. Mom. Her message: "Just checking in. Hope you're not stewing. Let's not make this awkward, okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the spreadsheet, scrolled down to the cabin row, and hit bold. The message came just as I was folding laundry, some quiet hour past midnight, when even the hum of the fridge felt louder than it should have. I wasn't expecting anything. I'd muted the family chat days ago, but this came from another number. Lisa, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. She'd forwarded me a screenshot. It was from Inez's private group thread, the one she used to coordinate events with her curated circle. The caption read, "Let's hope she doesn't cry again like last time at Mom's birthday." The attached image was a cropped photo of me, sitting stiffly at a dinner table, blinking too fast. That night, I'd left early, claiming I had a headache. No one followed. No one asked. But now, that moment was repackaged as drama, reframed like I'd made a scene, when the only sound I made was my heels clicking against the pavement as I walked to my car alone. I didn't overreact, I whispered to myself. They under-respected. That was the truth no one ever printed on paper napkins at brunch. I sat down, back rigid, and pulled up my old journal. I hadn't written in it for weeks. I typed out phrases they'd tossed around like confetti at family functions. "You're too sensitive." It wasn't that serious. That's just how we joke. That last one. That one stung. It was the default defense anytime someone crossed a line. The first time they joked about my weight, I laughed with them. The second time, I swallowed it. By the fifth, I was skipping meals the night before family events. They called it humor. I called it silent compliance. They didn't call me dramatic when I paid their bills, I muttered, glancing toward the envelope on the table. Family ledger. I closed my laptop, too tired to cry, too clear-eyed to pretend. The brunch came back to me like it had been waiting behind the curtain of my thoughts. Spring. Soft sun. I was invited last minute, texted the night before like an afterthought. "We'll squeeze you in," Inez had written. I should have said no, but I showed up the next morning, still in scrubs. They were all dressed in coordinated pastels, lemon yellows, soft corals. The table was set with care. Name cards, mason jars, floral napkins. I hovered near the doorway, unsure where to go. Inez pulled a folding chair from the garage, unfolded it with a practiced flick, and slid it at the far end of the table. "Here you go, butterfly," she said with a smile. "You always flutter in last minute." Everyone laughed. I sat. The chair wobbled. My legs cramped from how low it was. I nodded politely through conversations, scooped small portions onto my plate, and pretended not to notice that no one asked me a single question that entire meal. Weeks later, I saw the Instagram post. The same brunch. But the photo was different. The seat I'd used, the awkward folding chair, wasn't there. In its place, a decorative butterfly emoji floated where I'd been. Caption: "So peaceful and perfect. Everyone who mattered. There." I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I just stared, thumb hovering over the screen. You don't get to keep erasing me and calling it peace. You don't get to turn me into a punchline when I'm the reason the check cleared. I opened my notes app, started writing out the message, then I deleted it. They didn't deserve my words, not in their inbox. They belonged somewhere they couldn't ignore. The spreadsheet came alive under my fingers. I added a new row next to the brunch weekend. Folding chair, no RSVP, labeled dramatic. Under the new column, emotional impact, I typed 9/10. The ledger wasn't just financial now. It was forensic. I remembered a quote from Maya Angelou, one I'd saved years ago. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." I closed the file, walked to the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just stood there, finally sure that I wasn't imagining any of it. Silence had never been my weakness. It had been their expectation. They counted on me to keep showing up, keep paying, keep nodding. I opened a new tab on my browser and drafted a caption over a photo I'd taken last fall, me standing on a cliff, wind in my hair, arms folded. No filters. The problem isn't that I arrived late. It's that I was never part of their script. I didn't post it, not yet, but I saved it. That night, I lit a candle, made tea, and scrolled through travel websites. Typed in, "solo getaways near ocean." The cursor blinked. Let them miss the version of me they silenced. I woke up to a different kind of alarm. Not the usual chime from my phone, but the high-pitched ding of back-to-back email notifications. I blinked against the screen's glow, still in bed, and saw them piling up. Fraud alerts. Credit card activity detected. Multiple purchases flagged. My heart sank. I sat up, hair knotted from sleep, grabbed the phone, and opened the Chase app. First transaction. TSA pre-check. Then, premium flight seat upgrades, luxury baggage fees. Every charge was from the same travel company in Maui. Booked under Valmai Sterling, Ines Marigold, Randall Bishop, not one mention of me. The timestamps hit me harder than the charges. These were made after I froze the card. They tried again, I whispered, sliding off the bed. Without asking, without shame. I called the bank, voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. Yes, I want to dispute several new charges. The card was locked. I need to escalate this. After the call, I paced the living room, each step growing more deliberate. I wasn't even angry. I was awake. There's a difference. Flashback, 2 years ago. Dad's blood pressure had spiked. He refused the ER out of pocket. I told him to take my card, emergency only. Since then, that piece of plastic became their escape route. Inez once joked, "You're like our family sponsor. We should have a gold plaque made for you." It wasn't funny, but I laughed. Now I stared at the list of recent charges: limo service, wine bar, priority boarding, airport lounge day passes. They didn't need me. They needed what I provided. This isn't about money, I said to myself. This is about identity theft with a smile. I opened our family group chat, typed without hesitation. All charges moving forward will be considered unauthorized. Further attempts will be reported. I didn't wait for replies. I closed the app. 10 minutes later, the ping started. Ines, we didn't think you'd want to come. You never seem interested in these things. Mom, I wish you wouldn't make a scene. We're trying to enjoy this trip. I didn't even blink, not a word of apology, just the same narrative. Crystal overreacting again. Crystal difficult. Crystal inconvenient. I paid in silence, I said, scrolling through their guiltless excuses. And now they call my no noise? I threw the phone onto the couch. Flashback to the planning phase. 10 days ago, group message, flight info being finalized. I replied, let me know if I should book time off work. No response. None. Back then, I told myself maybe they forgot. Maybe the thread got buried. Maybe I wasn't loud enough. Now I knew better. They had already booked the trip, already selected seats, already planned dinner reservations. They wrote me out before I even raised a question. They didn't forget me. They excluded me, strategically, cleanly, like I was a smudge on their itinerary. I stood still in the kitchen, the morning light just beginning to fill the corners of the room. The kind of silence that once used to feel peaceful now just proved how alone I was in a house they'd never bothered to visit. Back at my desk, I opened a fresh draft. 2. Family Group. BCC, Yara Linden. Subject, Financial Independence. I will not subsidize silence anymore. Consider this my formal exit from group financial dependency. I sent it, no second draft, no edits, no emojis to soften the blow. Then I opened a new tab. 2. HR. Subject, Vacation Request Cancellation. I won't be needing time off next week. Please reinstate my regular shift schedule. I hit send. I wasn't going to spend time I earned on people who never earned me. I searched solo getaways, Oregon coast, quiet cabins, beachfront with a kitchenette and a balcony. I didn't need a resort. I didn't need first class. I needed out. Click. Confirmed. As the booking page processed, I inhaled deeply, slower than usual. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been breathing. Guilt has a way of shrinking your lungs. My laptop screen dimmed, and on the screensaver I'd forgotten was there. A quote floated into view. You don't owe them the version of yourself they pretend to love. Ping. New message. Inez. Mom says you're being selfish. We were counting on you. I didn't hesitate. You were right, I replied. You shouldn't count on me anymore. And with that, I deleted the thread. Not muted, deleted. 2 days passed. No calls, no texts, no pings. Just a silence so wide, it felt intentional. I should have felt relieved. But when I opened my phone that evening, I knew what kind of quiet it really was. The setup kind. The kind that doesn't end in peace, but in public relations. The group chat had come alive again. At the top, a new video posted by Inez, titled, Some Doors Are Closed for a Reason. It opened with soft ukulele music and sweeping drone shots of the ocean. Then came the real show, Mom and Dad smiling at a luau, Randall spinning a cocktail, Inez posing in front of a sunset with a coconut in hand, smiling like nothing had ever cracked. I watched the video 3 times, once in shock, once in anger, and once just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't in a single frame, of course not. But what pulled my stomach tight was the caption, Peace feels so good when you cut out the noise. They used my absence as their branding. They didn't just exclude me, they used me as their reason to feel better. They weaponized serenity, I muttered, setting my phone down like it burned. The comments underneath were worse. This energy is unmatched. Your family just gets it. One I didn't recognize read, "Hope that sister of yours doesn't ruin it again." My name wasn't mentioned, but I didn't need it to be. The implication was sharper without it. They don't just erase me, I whispered. They replace me with a version that justifies their actions. I remembered a podcast I'd heard during a long drive home from the clinic months ago. The host had said, "In dysfunctional families, silence is survival. In healthy ones, it's mutual respect." My silence had been survival for years, but now they were dressing it up as dysfunction I caused. I tried logging into Spotify. Error. Netflix? Nope. Hulu. Account not found. I blinked. I had set those subscriptions up. I was the one who paid the bills, managed the passwords, reset the logins when Dad forgot them every other week. And now? Ines messaged separately. "We cleaned up the list. Budgeting's tight." No thank you. No warning. Just a sweep of digital scissors across my name. "They'll keep what you gave," I said aloud, "until you stop giving. Then they'll label you a burden." I scrolled back through my own mental archives. The unpaid babysitting hours, the grocery runs, the time I left work early to take Mom to the doctor, only for her to later post that Randall dropped everything to be there. They built their story with pieces of me and then shut the door behind them. I opened a fresh Word document and pasted select screenshots from my ledger. No names, no accusations, just receipts. Captioned each, "No" is a full sentence. Silence isn't agreement. It's self-preservation. I hit publish on a private blog I hadn't touched in years. The link made its way around quietly, shared among coworkers, a few old classmates, one former mentor. Some messages trickled in. "I've been there. This hit too close. Thank you for writing this." I didn't reply to any of them, not yet, but I let the validations settle into my ribs. Then I did something simple. I blocked the family group chat. Deleting the thread took longer than I thought it would. My finger hesitated over the red button, but eventually I pressed it and watched it vanish. I opened my journal. The pen felt heavy, but steady. "They always said family is forever," I wrote. I believed them, until they made it conditional. I logged into my own streaming service accounts, created new logins. One user, just me. "I can afford silence now," I said aloud. "But this time, it's mine." I made tea, the kind I bought but never drank because Mom didn't like the scent. Now it filled the room, citrus and clove, bold and unapologetic. The quiet didn't sting anymore. It hummed. Then came the final twist. A push notification from my inbox. "New subscriber alert. Inez Marigold just launched a family wellness podcast." My thumb hovered. Episode 1. Toxic Energy. When Family Fails You. I didn't laugh. I smiled. Darkly. The apartment was still warm from the night before. I hadn't opened a window all day. The heels from the community health gala still lay near the front door, one tipped over like it had given up trying to stand. I hadn't even taken off my makeup. I sat in silence, plaque still in hand, dress wrinkled across my knees. The applause from the night echoed faintly in my ears. Coworkers clapping, shaking my hand, telling me I was long overdue for recognition. Their smiles had been genuine, their voices warm. But the row of empty chairs I'd reserved for my family had been colder than any silence I'd sat through before. I'd sent the invites weeks in advance. No one responded. I followed up once. Still nothing. After the ceremony, I scrolled through Instagram. There they were, Mom, Dad, Inez, Randall, out at a dinner party, matching outfits, holding cocktails, laughing under string lights like the night didn't belong to someone else. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not even a, "Sorry we couldn't make it." Just a caption. It's the little moments with family that mean the most. I leaned back on the couch, stared at the ceiling, and felt something click. Not snap, not explode, just click, like a puzzle piece falling into place. the kind that completes a picture you didn't want to finish. Then came the message. A DM from a former coworker named Shayna. Hey, not to pry, but is everything okay? I heard your sister say something on a podcast about your mental health. I froze. Before I could respond, a screenshot arrived. Inez, sitting on a podcast panel with a gold mic in front of her, speaking with calm concern. Some people act out when they don't know how to ask for help, she said, eyes solemn. Especially with anxiety or depression, it gets tough. Captioned underneath. My sister's really struggling right now. They hadn't shown up for my night, but they used my absence to gather sympathy. They skipped the event, I muttered, but exploited the applause. I reopened the family ledger file, added 2 new tabs, public erasure, medical defamation. This was no longer just a history, it was a report. I opened my email. To Family Group, BCC, HR Department. Subject, clarification. Body. Since my name and mental health were made public without consent, I am clarifying the facts here. Please see attached. Attached, Family Ledger, theavail.pdf. I hit send. No shaking hands. No doubts. They made me a story. I was just reclaiming the script. It took less than an hour. Ping. Inez. How could you do this to us? Sofanisba. You're embarrassing your father. Valmai. Take it down, now. I didn't answer. I didn't open the thread. Instead, I received another message from a cousin I hadn't heard from since a funeral 5 years ago. Whatever you sent, Inez is spiraling. Her sponsorship deal might fall apart. I stood at my sink, poured myself a glass of water, and smiled softly. I didn't burn the house down, I said aloud. I just turned the lights on. Later that night, the inbox changed. A message from my old high school teacher. I saw what you posted. Thank you. Then another, from a woman I used to carpool with to clinicals. You put words to something I've lived for years. One stood out the most. An email from my godmother, someone who distanced herself from the family long ago. I always knew you saw more than they thought. You always had the receipts. Turns out, the family's shadow wasn't just mine. I opened my camera, sat on the couch in the same dress from the gala, face bare now, no lighting tricks, just the plaque in my lap and my voice steady. I hit record. For years, I paid, I contributed, I disappeared when needed, but I won't be invisible anymore. I uploaded the video to my private page. Shared it with no hashtags, no calls for support, just the caption. Visibility is not vengeance, it's survival. By the next morning, the video had been quietly passed around. Co-workers sent heart emojis. Friends I hadn't spoken to since college replied with full paragraphs. There were no fireworks, just acknowledgement. The inbox held over 100 messages. One simply said, "You gave me the courage to finally say something." Then came the notification. Subject line, "Cease and desist request, Inez Marigold." I didn't flinch. I clicked download PDF, closed my laptop, and whispered to myself, they're finally scared. The apartment was still, not the peaceful kind of stillness, but the echo of something final. I checked my phone out of habit. No new notifications, no comments, no missed calls. The video I posted had stopped circulating. The messages had slowed. But something inside me still vibrated with everything they didn't say. I found myself scrolling through old family photos saved in a folder I hadn't opened in months. Thanksgiving 2017. 4th of July at the lake. My birthday 2 years ago. 1 cake, no candles, and a blurry shot of me in the corner. I wasn't looking for nostalgia. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Then I realized I wasn't longing. I was confirming how much of me had already been left out, cropped out, or conveniently blurred. It hurts less when you stop needing them to look for you, I whispered. My phone buzzed once. A new message from Mom. Sometimes it's better to be quiet and graceful, honey. Not everything needs to be a war. I read it 3 times, each slower than the last. There it was again. The tidy packaging of shame, wrapped in politeness, her specialty. They always valued me more when I didn't speak, when I folded napkins, covered bills, and exited quietly. My usefulness was mistaken for peace. I opened the message thread, fingers poised to respond. Typed, "You used me." Backspace. Typed again. "You don't get to call me difficult after everything I've done." Backspace. Instead, I screenshot the message and filed it into a folder on my phone, labeled Emotional Framing. A quote from a book I read years ago echoed, "Be the daughter they'd never expect to fight back." Then came a second blow, this one sharper. My cousin Lauren messaged me with a pair of photos. "Thought you'd want to see this before it disappears." The first image was from the last family gathering, a group shot in front of the fireplace. I was in it, standing to the side, holding a gift bag, awkward and half smiling. The second photo, publicly posted, was the same shot, cropped. I was gone. The caption read, "Everyone who makes our life shine." They hadn't forgotten me. They had removed me. That kind of intentional erasure doesn't come from neglect. It comes from narrative control. They weren't just rewriting me. They were writing me out. My mind snapped back to that night. I had brought the cake, a gluten-free one because Inez said Randall was trying a new diet. I bought gifts for the nieces and nephews, cleaned dishes while everyone else took selfies, laughed politely when someone joked about that time Crystal cried at brunch. I was in the room. I did the work. I gave the time. And then, just like that, I was deleted. "Being left out is painful," I said aloud. "But being wiped out is war." I picked up a dry erase marker and wrote across my whiteboard, "Visibility value, but invisibility equals control." I opened a blank document and started typing, not for them, but for me. "I've watched you curate a life without me while still depending on me. I'm done being the ghost with a credit score." I sat with it, read it twice, saved it as a draft, didn't send it, because I realized they won't hear me. Not when I speak, not when I explain. They'll only pay attention when I stop giving. And that's when I began the slow unraveling. Not dramatic, not explosive, systematic. I revoked access to every subscription tied to my name. Spotify, Hulu, Netflix, canceled the accounts, changed passwords, removed their devices. I blocked numbers, Inez, Randall, even Mom. No angry farewells, just silence with finality. Then I pulled out the legal packet my lawyer had drafted for something unrelated and added one small line to my will. Remove Valmai Sterling and Sofonisba Sterling as emergency contacts. It wasn't vindictive. It was clean. I closed the laptop and whispered, "I'm not the problem. I'm just no longer the solution." Later that day, I walked to my mailbox in sweats and a hoodie, hair still wet from the shower. Inside the box was a single white envelope. My name on the front, no return address. I knew the handwriting. Mom's, neat and round. Inside, a birthday card, the kind you find in the discount rack. "Happy birthday. We love you, even if you don't always make it easy." The word love was underlined. I flipped the card over. The price tag was still attached. Monday morning hit differently. No chaos, no drama, just the rhythmic tap of my fingers on the office keyboard, syncing with the soft hum of the building's ancient HVAC system. I felt lighter, not because things had resolved, but because I had stopped waiting for them to. Jasmine, a colleague from 2 desks over, peeked her head around the partition. "Hey, just wanted to say, your post last week? That was brave." I gave her a small nod, letting a gentle smile rise. Truth isn't always loud, but when it's real, it resonates. She nodded back, then disappeared into her inbox. Mine wasn't as quiet, 10 unread messages, not from strangers, but from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former classmates, old coworkers, even a childhood neighbor. Some said they'd seen the video. Others had heard something through the grapevine. I clicked through them slowly, each one carrying a mix of empathy and curiosity. The kind that says, "I care," but also, what really happened? They think it's over, I muttered, but truth lingers longer than gossip. Then came the voicemail. Valmai. His voice was brittle under the surface. So now you're just going to buy a house and cut us off like we're strangers? I hadn't told them. I'd closed on a modest little place 2 weeks ago, a quiet bungalow tucked into a sleepy street lined with dogwood trees. No announcement, no photos, just mine. I didn't owe them that. Later that afternoon, I checked my mail. Inside was a sealed envelope from a financial advisory firm I hadn't dealt with in years. I opened it standing right there in the hallway. The form inside was simple. Request to update emergency contact, submitted by Valmai Sterling. I exhaled, lips tight, a move meant to imply control, or ownership, or both. I called the office and revoked every shared tie, closed the account, removed every trace of his access. Independence was never my crime, I said to myself. It was their loss of control, and they weren't handling it well. That evening, my coworker Anna passed me her phone discreetly. "Have you seen this?" she asked. It was a Facebook post from one of Inez's friends. Some people forget who raised them, especially when the bills stop getting paid. I didn't react, didn't comment, didn't need to. Another reminder. When they can't control the narrative, they attack your character. I opened LinkedIn instead, updated my headline. Rebuilding truth, one boundary at a time. No context, just clarity. Then came an email. No sender name, just concerned about you in the subject line. Inside, I heard from a friend that you left the family because of a breakdown. Just wanted to check if you're okay. I read it twice, expression unreadable. Randall. Only one person would plant that idea and have the audacity to call it compassion. Turns out, he'd listed my mental instability in a grant proposal, using my supposed absence to justify reallocating budget for unforeseen family trauma. They didn't just exclude me, they used my silence as a prop. I called the funding board and calmly explained the situation, forwarding legal documentation. I just want the record corrected, I said. Nothing more. But inside, I added another line to the ledger. Then I logged onto my personal website, one I hadn't touched since my nursing school days. I wrote a statement. Clean, calm, firm. My silence has allowed others to craft a story I don't recognize. I owe no one a rebuttal, but I refuse to be rewritten. I attached a redacted version of the family ledger. No feelings, just facts. And I disabled comments. This isn't to be liked, I whispered. It's to be recorded. 2 days later, the editor of a local community magazine emailed me. They were doing a feature on women reshaping their lives after family estrangement. A friend had forwarded them my post. At first, I declined, but something nudged me. Maybe it wasn't about the feature. Maybe it was about refusing to stay small. So I said yes. The piece was titled, Quiet Strength, the Advocate Behind the Curtain. I talked about boundaries, burnout, the cost of showing up without ever being invited. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. And for the first time in years, I felt my chest expand in a way that wasn't painful. That night, as I was folding laundry and sipping chamomile, my phone buzzed. One message, from Randall. This went further than it needed to. We're all suffering now. You win. I set the phone down. Didn't even open the full message. It was never a game. The morning was so quiet, I could hear the faint tick of the clock on the microwave. That used to annoy me, those soft reminders that time moves forward even when nothing changes. But now, it felt honest. No more texts, no more sudden apologies wrapped in manipulation. Just space, just stillness. I sat by the window, sunlight warming my ankles. My inbox was empty. My phone hadn't buzzed since Randall's last message 3 days ago. You win, he said. But I never asked to play. No one was trying to pull me back in. That was the strange part. They weren't fighting to fix it, weren't pretending anymore. They'd accepted my absence, and in that absence, they felt their own weight, not mine. No more jumping at every ping, I said aloud. Just stillness. By noon, I'd made it through half the boxes stacked near my desk. Cleaning wasn't just about space anymore. It was about story, about deciding what stays and what doesn't. That's when I saw the soft pink envelope tucked between a few flyers, addressed in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a folded letter. Please return any gifts, family heirlooms, or sentimental keepsakes if you no longer feel part of us. I snorted, not out of cruelty, out of disbelief. The tone was sugary, like this was some polite exchange, like we were trading sweaters and not severing blood. I walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out the necklace Mom gave me on my 18th birthday, a silver chain, small pendant. She said it was just a little something back then. I'd later learned she'd used my own savings card to buy it. They want their version of me back, I said, turning the necklace in my fingers. The quiet one who said thank you and never asked for receipts. Fine. I opened another drawer. The family cookbook, never touched. A birthday gift from Inez, unopened. A dusty frame with an old photo of us at the lake, back when I still believed the way they looked at me meant love. I wrapped each item in newspaper, neatly, not out of sentiment, but out of closure. I found a box and labeled it with sharp, straight letters, Return to Sender. Then I added a sticky note to the top. No forwarding address. I didn't overthink it. I didn't pause at the mailbox. I just dropped it at the post office and walked out. Let them call it ungrateful. I call it unburdening. Later that day, I put on walking shoes and took a slow loop around the neighborhood. It had been weeks since I let myself walk without a destination. Families passed with strollers. Couples held hands. Teenagers rode bikes too fast for the sidewalk. I didn't envy any of it, just observed. Some families are born, others are chosen, and some are left, I said quietly, as a toddler shrieked with laughter across the street. A quote came back to me from a therapist I once ghosted. Closure isn't reconciliation, it's choosing to no longer bleed from the wound. That stuck with me now more than ever. I returned home, made tea, sat in silence, wrote in my journal. The myth of forever family. Every moment of peace had come with terms. Every favor was currency. Every silence, rented. I flipped back through earlier pages. Notes I'd scribbled during hard weeks. Posts I'd drafted and never published. And then I wrote, Closure is self-made. Forgiveness is optional. Distance is sacred. And below that, I didn't lose family. I returned myself. I didn't cry. I felt unlayered. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I bought myself something. A record player. Simple, sleek, a pale blue I knew Mom would have mocked for not matching anything. That made me love it more. I placed it in the corner of my living room, pulled out a dusty vinyl I hadn't touched since college, Ella Fitzgerald, and let the needle drop. The room filled with warmth. Not just music, but space that belonged entirely to me. I danced barefoot, slowly, no choreography, no performance. I never needed a big moment, I whispered. I just needed a moment that wasn't borrowed. Later, I cooked myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just something for me, plated it, sat down, ate in peace. This, I said to no one, is what my silence paid for. Then, right before bed, I found one last envelope in the mail basket. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Me, maybe 6 years old, taped to the back of a beach postcard. I was squinting at the sun, hair a mess, gap-toothed smile across my face. No note, no context, just 5 words written in black Sharpie. Still part of us. I stood there for a full minute, holding it like it might vanish. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened the drawer by my nightstand, and placed it inside, and I closed it. Late that evening, with the windows shut and the rest of the world winding down, I sat at my desk for one last session with the family ledger. No music, no distractions, just me and the cold, quiet glow of the screen. Line after line of unpaid debts, invisible work, silent sacrifices. I scrolled until I reached the final entry and clicked into the next row. My fingers hesitated just a beat. Then I typed, emotional restitution, self-claimed. I printed the file. One last copy. Not for proof, for closure. This version was different. I signed the bottom, not with my full name, but simply Thea. If they ever ask what they took, I said aloud, sealing the pages into a manila folder, this is what they'll get. I didn't pause. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I walked the envelope down to the shipping center, along with a smaller bundle, printouts of the revoked emergency contact authorizations, copies of bank statements with removed access, and a notarized letter that read, "All financial ties are permanently severed." It was addressed to Valmai's workplace HR department. On the front of the envelope, I wrote in capital letters, "For documentation, not discussion." They made it official long ago. I was just catching up. By noon, I had a text from my cousin. "What did you send? Dad's losing it. They're panicking." I replied without hesitation. Nothing they didn't already write with their actions. That afternoon, I received a push notification. One of Inez's brand partners had issued a quiet PR statement. In light of recent personal disclosures, we are ending our collaboration with Ms. Marigold due to internal family dispute. I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot it. I just let my shoulders drop for the first time in days. Vindication doesn't need applause, just truth. A few days later, a check arrived, one I'd nearly forgotten. It was from my parents, mailed months ago, with a sticky note attached. "To make things right, let's put this behind us." I never cashed it. Not until now. I walked it straight into my credit union, endorsed the back, and deposited every cent into a fund created under a new name. The Quiet Support Scholarship. The purpose? To help young women supporting their families in silence while putting themselves last. In the memo line of the donation, I wrote, "In honor of every girl told she's too much while she gave too much." I didn't return the money. I repurposed it. The next day, I met Yara for coffee. She was the only person in my life who'd seen me at my lowest and never asked me to justify the climb. I stirred my oat milk latte slowly, then said, "I used to think I was born to be the bridge." Yara looked at me over the rim of her mug. "Turns out you're better off being the shore." "Bridges get walked on," I said. She nodded. "Shores get visited with reverence." We toasted without clinking. "I didn't lose a family," I told her. "I lost the illusion of one, and I'm okay with that." Later that week, I updated my voicemail. "If you're calling to ask for money, time, or silence, I'm no longer available." I didn't say it with bitterness. I said it like truth. That afternoon, I reopened an application I had abandoned 2 years ago. A creative writing fellowship, one I'd skipped to help Inez rebuild her blog after Randall's failed investment. The prompt this year: "Tell us what resilience looks like." I titled my essay, "I am not the safety net. I am the storm that finally said no." I reviewed it once, breathed in, clicked submit. No announcement. No text to brag. Just me. Choosing myself. That night, my doorbell rang. A small brown box waited on the mat. Inside was a single copy of a book. My book. The one I'd written in bits and pieces for years and finally had the courage to self-publish. The cover was simple, the design understated. But inside, on the very first page, was a quote I'd written months ago in the dark. "You don't owe anyone your healing, but you can write about it." I sat at the kitchen table, signed the first copy with my name, my full name, and whispered one final sentence to no one in particular. Paid in full.